The U.S. Department of Agriculture says it plans to revoke a decades-old rule that protects more than 58 million acres of national forests from road construction, drilling, mining, and logging.
I work at the Clinton Foundation, and I love exploring our country's beautiful national parks and forests and undisturbed wild places. This week, something called the Roadless Rule was eliminated. I know, you've probably never heard of it. Well, the Clinton-Gore administration established it, and for 25 years, it's quietly protected 58 million acres of national forest from road construction and logging. These untouched lands are sources of clean water, they protect habitats for endangered animals, and they're our last collection of untouched wilderness in the country. Why is the Roadless Rule being rescinded? Wildfire prevention. But here's the truth. Roadless areas are actually 4 times less likely to catch fire than areas with roads and logging, according to a 25-year study by the Wilderness Society. This isn't about safety. This is about opening pristine forests to logging. The Roadless Rule is common sense policy that's protected millions of acres of America's pristine wilderness and wildlife for decades. Our wild places don't have a voice, but we do.
Too special to pave? The last stand for America's wildlands. This is The Main Perspective, y'all, and I'm Drew Hoagland. Welcome back to another episode, one which I expected to be straightforward and to be kind of a standalone episode. And little did I know how much more complex the whole situation was. And I had previously planned to go back and get this video out there so it could give me a couple days to go and do some more research on some of the topics I've covered before. Janet Mills, Avangrid, CMP, the CMCC acquisition. Like, there's a lot that I really want to get into. The gubernatorial race coming up, I haven't done a video on that yet, and I've really been meaning to. Laurel Libby, I want to do a video on that. There's so much. And I expected that I could get this video out on the Roadless Rule controversy and shoot it out there and then give myself some time. But boy, was I wrong. There's a lot of intricacies, a lot of nuances. I'm having a hard time figuring out who really benefits and how much it will really cost the American people. And so rather than me ramble on, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Maine Matters with Solcy and Gunner, and they're going to talk us through it and give us a little bit more perspective. But as always, I look forward to your comments down below. Please go ahead and drop your thoughts, because I want to know, I want to get a nuanced perspective on this. And where I'm trying to remain neutral, I don't lean left, I don't lean right, I am much more in the center. I'm trying to give a nuanced perspective, so your engagement really helps. And so without me rambling on anymore, as I tend to do, I am trying to make videos shorter. So let's go ahead, check in with Solcy and Gunner.
Okay, so today we're going to dig into something that's really stirred things up, from Maine clear across to D.C.
Yeah, it's a big one. We're talking about the decision, the Trump administration's decision to basically pull back the 2001 Roadless Rule.
Exactly. A rule that for almost, 25 years? It protected a huge chunk of our national forests.
About 58 million acres, so maybe 30% of the whole system. Kept it off limits to most new roads, most timber harvesting.
And now, poof, those protections are gone. So our goal here is really just to help you get a handle on the main arguments, these really clashing ideas about our forests and, why it matters so much to people.
Right. It boils down to, well, 2 pretty starkly different ways of looking at it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
You've got one side championing what they call active management. Hands-on stuff. Good for forests, good for communities, they say. And then the other side is really pushing back, warning about corporate interests and saying we absolutely need these untouched wild areas for nature itself, but also kind of for the human spirit.
Okay, let's unpack that first view then, the active management side. What's their core beef with the old Roadless Rule?
Well, they basically saw it as this overly broad, federal, one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right.
That it stopped local experts, people actually living and working there, from doing what they felt was needed. Especially, they argue, with this unprecedented wildfire crisis.
They actually put numbers on that risk, didn't they? Wasn't it the Forest Service chief?
Yeah, Chief Schultz said nearly half of those roadless acres are at high or very high risk. So the idea behind repealing the rule is to allow, well, what they term targeted surgical intervention.
Meaning getting equipment in there.
Exactly. Access for thinning, for doing those hazard reduction burns. They sometimes point to Australia, like the Aboriginal cultural burning practices, as a sort of model for proactive care.
So it's about restoring flexibility and that older idea of multiple use.
Precisely. Yeah. Getting back to balancing jobs, timber, recreation, conservation, all of it. They frame the old rule as benign neglect, basically, and want to move towards, active stewardship for healthy forests and healthy communities.
Okay, that's a clear argument. So what about the pushback? The folks who call this a betrayal, how do they see it?
Well, for them, it's fundamentally a giveaway to corporate interests. That's the language they use. They see it risking permanent harm to our natural heritage.
So the value they place on these lands is different.
Totally different. They see these 58 million acres as absolutely vital. They're like the sources of our cleanest rivers, the last safe places for endangered wildlife, the absolute core of the outdoor recreation economy.
And the whole argument about needing roads for fire management.
They find that absurd. I mean, they point out the Forest Service already has this enormous maintenance backlog of $8 billion for the roads it already has.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, on something like 386,000 miles of roads. Plus, they argue, most wildfires are started by humans. And more roads just mean more access for people, which could actually increase fire risk.
So they see the fire safety argument as maybe not the real reason.
They often call it a smokescreen or a Trojan horse.
Okay.
Their claim is the real goal is commercial logging in these remote, previously protected areas. Because, they say, the original rule already allowed access for fighting fires when needed. The real fire danger zones, they argue, are closer to communities the wildland-urban interface, and those areas generally aren't roadless anyway.
Interesting distinction. And what about the economics? You mentioned the outdoor recreation economy.
Right. They argue that the money generated by outdoor recreation, like hiking, camping, fishing, hunting in these wild areas, absolutely dwarfs what you'd get from logging them.
So building roads and logging actually hurts the economy in their view.
It diminishes the value of that wildness.
Yeah.
They see it as trading a sustainable, long-term economic engine for like a quick, short-term extractive gain. They might bring up examples like Peabody Energy in Black Mesa as a cautionary tale about, companies taking profits while leaving communities with the environmental costs. Removing protections enables that, they fear.
Okay, so stepping back, what this really shows you, listening to this, is just how fundamentally different these philosophies are. It's not just about trees or roads, is it?
Not at all. It's about safety, yes, but also economies, what kind of future we want, what the very character of America's wild places should be. Both sides talk about forest health, but they mean really different things by it.
One sees health through intervention, the other through preservation.
Exactly. It really forces you to think about how you balance all these competing needs and values. Community safety, jobs, ecological integrity, that sense of wildness.
So as we wrap this up, here's something to maybe chew on. The Roadless Rule, someone once called it a promise we made to our children. Thinking about that, how do you think we can best honor that kind of promise for the future?
Yeah. How do we make sure future generations get to experience that awe, that solitude in wild America, but also deal with very real, urgent problems like wildfires and supporting communities that depend on these lands? What does real long-term stewardship actually look like to you?
For those that are new or tuning in, Solsi and Gunner are AI creations that I made. I left the prompt running over top at the beginning so you could know how I prompted it. I try to leave it up to AI. I created Gunner to be Republican leaning, and I created Solsi to be more Democratic leaning. And so you can read the prompt, you can see what I put in. What you see is what I gave it. So there's no hidden. You can do this on your own. AI even generated the voices, and now it just keeps those voices consistent, which I appreciate. And what do you think? Are you enjoying AI? How I'm utilizing it? Or do you think that I should just go back to not using AI and just giving up mainstream media and my own perspective? Go ahead, leave your thoughts down below. But before I talk about my own perspective, let's go ahead and see what mainstream media is saying. And this is the first time I've ever seen straight arrow news. So it's not mainstream, but this is the knowledge that's getting out to the masses. So let's go ahead and check in there.
The USDA, which oversees the U.S. Forest Service, intends to eliminate the Roadless Rule. The policy was created to preserve wilderness across roughly 30% of the country's national forest. Research shows building roads can lead to harmful consequences like disruptions to habitats, ecosystems, and contamination of drinking water. An impact report by the National Forest Service in 2001 showed millions of people rely on drinking water from national forests. But USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins argues the rule is outdated and overly restrictive, leading to a lack of economic growth and less innovation. Rollins said in a statement Monday, once again, President Trump is removing absurd obstacles to common sense management of our natural resources by rescinding the overly restrictive Roadless Rule. She says the move is in line with recent executive orders from the president seeking to expand logging, drilling, and mining across the U.S. in an effort to make America more energy independent. The Trump administration claims 28 million acres of forest protected by the Roadless Rule are in areas at high risk of wildfire. Rollins says opening up the forest to logging also mitigates the risk of wildfires by improving forest management. But environmental advocates disagree. They contend more logging, mining, and drilling worsens climate change and leads to more intense wildfires. They note these processes tend to strip forests of natural protective barriers against fires. Critics also argue the move is a giveaway to the timber industry under the guise of wildfire prevention. The conservation campaign director of the nonprofit Wilderness Society, Josh Hicks, argues the elimination of the Roadless Rule is bad news for all Americans. He said any attempt to revoke it is an attack on the air and water we breathe and drink, abundant recreation opportunities which millions of people enjoy each year, havens for wildlife, and critical buffers threatened by increasingly severe wildfire season. The logging industry, on the other hand, celebrated the USDA's decision. The American Loggers Council executive director says to allow access into these forests like we used to prior to 2001 and for 100 years prior to that will enable the forest managers to practice sustainable forest management. The director also says national forests are overly dense and contends the timber industry will still face restriction on the amount of trees they can log.
All right. So is it just me, or do you see why this whole conversation is complex? I don't have any answers. With this video, I really just wanted to present to y'all what I came across in just a few hours of research. Again, I'm going to need to put more time into this. But what I will say is my mind works with forethought. I'm constantly thinking into the future. And I guess my biggest takeaway here is that what we do now sets a precedent. Tesla is about to jump off. Don't hurt yourself. I give him better ways to do it, and that's what he prefers. So I try to think 100 years into the future. What will Maine look like? Will it resemble anything that I'd be familiar with? Or my grandfather, who was born in 1909? And if the answer is no, then I'm not really about that. I love Maine. I love how Maine operates. I love life here. Here's my bearded dragon Tesla. He's been shedding, so I haven't wanted to have him on camera, but it's mostly done now. So I know that we need technology. We need lithium batteries. We need oil. We need all these things to keep going in our modern way. I guess my question is it the only way to keep going? Or are there better alternatives? If the Australian Aborigines have been doing this for thousands of years, they don't need the technology that we're proposing. So we should learn more from them and from other countries. And Canada is vastly wild, and they handle it, they manage it. Fire is also part of ecological management. That being said, Clinton did enact this under an executive order. It never went through Congress. So I see both sides. I really do. And that's why I want to know your input. Go ahead, let me know in the comments what you think. Oh, he's a rogue lizard today, a rogue dragon. If you liked what you saw today, if you found any value, please go ahead, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things because it really does help me as a growing channel. And until the next video, y'all, this has been Drew Hoagland with The Maine Perspective.
Ready?
Catch you later.
Fight!
Leaders know that the American people want these priceless wildlands protected.
1,000 years ago, here in this country, it was all wilderness. And now we're looking at 1 to 2% of bits and pieces, pockets of wild places, you know, from Florida to Washington State, all across the country, little tiny pockets that remind us of who we are and where we came from.